we going live on this Hallows Eve. I'm getting many echoes. Means must be live. Wow, is that me? That is me. I'm a bit confused today. Just hit the lysergic acid. Peace, everybody. Welcome to the Alfa Vedic Halloween special. I am your lovely host, Miguel Nandul. And we have Ashlea Stinnett on today. I'm going to hit record and fire this up. Here we go, guys. It's hard to see with these things. Thanks for being on with us today, Ashlea. Really appreciate it. It's going to be a fun one. We've been wanting to dive into this topic forever.
I'm super excited to be here and to dive into this topic with you guys for sure.
Sweet, here we go. And boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with my good buddy, Dr. Bear Paul Lando, coming to you live and direct from the great state of Jefferson as we celebrate this Hallows Eve with a special Bigfoot Alfacast. For those listening, you can't see that I am indeed in costume today. I am the non-dualist hippie. As I was joking before we went live, one of the scariest things on the planet in this realm. I'm just kidding.
Here I was all excited. I thought we were interviewing John Lennon today.
That's a future show. He and Paul will be, that is the non-Paul.
The
What's
fall.
his name?
The fall.
Yeah, the fall, the great fall. Billy Shears.
Yeah.
Billy Shears and John will be on with us one of these episodes, Dr. Lando, but they don't even exist because they're all a construct. They're all just anyways. It's good to be here. We like to get into the fun of Halloween. I know there's a lot of darkness around this event, but that's what I've been stressing a lot on my Substack is when we have the awareness to look from everything from the outside in, we can transmute it all, and we can have the agency and the power to play within these realms and within these concepts as we see fit and not be victimized by them. And today we're going to be talking about a magical creature, a being, a community, a family, a race of beings that live by this way. They are the greatest. As we were saying, you want to learn sovereignty, you want to learn anarchy, well, you'll learn them from them. So I can't wait to get into this topic. Anything for our community before we bring Ashlea on?
Dr. No, this is going to be great fun. Ashlea, we'll give you a proper intro here, but thank you so much for being with us. Got a lot of good questions. You know, Halloween was always my favorite holiday growing up. I mean, what could be better than egging cop cars and going into a diabetic coma at the same time? So I have great Halloween memories, and I decided to wear my old man costume today.
I thought it was you were just using AI now. We know how youthful you actually are. We know you have your picture in your basement somewhere, Dorian. But yes, that was an allusion to Dorian.
Mike, are you on are we switching Hollywood Squares here? It looks like oh, there we go. Okay.
Are you
Got
good?
it.
Are you okay there? Yeah, it's
we're good. I should never question your technical acumen.
Well, today, the Great Sasquatch Awakening with Ashlea Stinnett. We've been wanting to get into this topic. We touch on it on so many Alfacasts, and I feel like we finally have the perfect guest to do it justice, to do this wonderful, wonderful reality justice. Our favorite costume party is ready to commence, and what better occasion to acknowledge the most infamous of the cryptid-hominid demographic than today on Halloween. Scientists remain skeptical that Bigfoot is a reality, but it's difficult to wholly dismiss centuries of folklore and countless firsthand accounts celebrating the existence of this hairy wild man sporting a size 37 AA moccasin. Known by many names across a diversity of cultures, Yeti, Sasquatch, Skookum, is that Skookum? I don't know that one. And abominable snowman, to name just a few. The enigmatic Squatch has continued to capture the investigative curiosity of many due to his reputed shape-shifting and telepathic abilities, as much as his uniquely large stature and reclusive demeanor. Ashlea Stinnett will be our anthropological guide on this Alfacast for good reason. She had her first encounter with the Sasquatch people in 2013. This began an incredible adventure of friendship, student-teacher relationship, and continuous interactions with the Sasquatch people through intentional camping trips in their known homelands across the Pacific Northwest and beyond. Video documentation of her adventures are available on her YouTube channel. There at Crypto Cryptid 1487. That link is in the show notes below, and she's on TikTok at Crypto Cryptid. Ashlea was featured in the documentary movie A Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot, which can be found on all streaming services. I have seen that. It's a wonderful film. Ashlea also publishes planners and journals through KDP that feature the personal photography that she takes during her intentional connection camp outs of Sasquatch-related artifacts, glyphs, footprints, and the majestic nature of their homelands, which can be purchased through Amazon. The remote Alfa Vedic farm is indeed ground zero for Bigfoot country, and everyone here from the local Yurok to the backwoods folk will entertain with their personal close encounter experiences. Alfacast is where you want to be with us today to join in on this fun. And it's fun, but it's actually a very serious topic as well, because for me, this is one that can open up to a whole world of solutions and really, bring awareness to really the true nature of the realm. Right, Bear? Go ahead and take it away, my buddy friend.
Yeah, we're definitely not alone in this realm. And Ashlea, again, thanks so much for being with us. This is going to be one of our favorites of all time, I think. And, we do live ground zero Bigfoot country here. I have never had a close encounter myself. When I walk around in the wilderness where our farm is located, it always seems like there's many eyes upon us. There's a lot of big animals and everything, but I'm sure there's other intelligent hominoids out there as well. So everybody really does have Bigfoot stories around here. And there's a lot of a very large Native American population, and the two prominent tribes around here. It's not a question whether Sasquatch exist. It's just a matter of exchanging ideas as far as the temperament and the purpose and the origins. And of course, as you're going to share with us, there's a lot of history that goes back to teach us who these folks really are. So maybe we can start with just telling us how you got into all this in the first place. That's always the best place, because most people would just be discounting the existence of not abnormal, but creatures that we don't know about because we've been gaslit about everything in our existence. So here you are with firsthand accounts. So take it away, and thanks again for being with us.
Thank you both so much. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be here with you both today and your audience. Thank you for this opportunity to shed some light, at least from my perspective, of this topic. I'd also like to say thank you to Danny Katz for being the bridge, for making this conversation happen. It's super appreciated. So, where to begin?
At the beginning.
At the beginning, I had no interest in Sasquatch. Sasquatch was not on my radar. It wasn't something I was thinking about. And I've lived a lot of different places in my life, mostly within the Southwest United States in Arizona. And I had UFO sightings throughout my life. And not just small ones, but pretty significant ones. And it wasn't something that I put time or energy or effort into looking into. It was something that I saw, And I was, even though I was on kind of like the outskirts and more of like alternative thinking, I was still pretty base consciousness. And I, around 2008, 2009, I started really feeling this pull to drop everything I was doing in Arizona to include my career and, you know, cash out my retirement and move up to the Pacific Northwest and follow and pursue a dream of culinary expression. So, and that wasn't what I was in law enforcement for most of my life. And I left that, and I wanted to start a taco cart. So I moved up here to do that. And when I moved up here with my family in 2010, we started seeing a lot of activity in the skies. And we were living off of the Columbia River Gorge, away from the city, and we were up on a hill, and we had this amazing view of the river, and then also Washington across the river. And so the UFO activity started becoming very, very prominent. And it was so prominent that I had to put time, effort, and energy into looking at what was going on. Why were we having these flyovers almost nightly? What is that all about? So this time period also coincided with me having my first computer ever in 2010. I'm a little late to the game. That's okay though. But that gave me the opportunity to explore the internet, the wild, wild west of the internet, and UFOs. and that can take you on a lot of different side streets, right? But it was all coalescing together. And I learned about a place that was in Washington where people would go to camp and have these experiences with UFOs and other types of things like Sasquatch and whatnot. So when we learned that that place was near, we're like, okay, let's go check that out. It's a bit of an evolutionary step, and you know, let's continue this education. So I spent a pretty good amount of time up in this area. And when they found out, when the caretakers of this land found out that we did food, that we had a food business and that we catered and whatnot, they were actually looking for a new caterer for their events that they would hold. They'd hold 3 or 4 events throughout the year. They'd have speakers. People would come in from all over the world. Everybody would camp, listen to the speakers, and also see the activity in the skies. So I started doing catering there. And this is all just kind of like culminating into a lot of experience, like, you know, boots on the ground in a highly charged area next to Mount Adams, where Mount Adams is having a ton of UFO activity. So as I was kind of moving through these circles and learning about all of this, I also learned about Sasquatch. Oh, okay, Sasquatch is a thing up here. That's interesting. What's that about? And since I had already had this hardcore, really quick download in the first 3 years of being up here, having people tell me, oh yes, Sasquatch is real and they're interdimensional and they're people. It wasn't a strange jump for me because I was already learning about all the UFOs and having my mind blown in all different directions of, you know, what more does this reality house? So in 2013, in that area is when I had my first experience with the Sasquatch people. And it was a very specific type of experience where it included telepathy. I knew that they were telepathic. And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I had stepped outside of my vehicle and I heard a call and response in the tree line behind me. And it was this hoo-wah, 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 going back and forth on my right and my left. And I turned and I looked behind me and I knew that they were telepathic. I was having a feeling that this was Sasquatch that was making these noises. And so my first instinct was to look back into the tree line and say, "Peace be with you, much love." And I did. And as soon as I did that, they stopped. The hoo-wahing quit. And then I started laughing. And I was like, I can't believe I just did that, that's funny. And I looked up into the sky and two white balls of light, pretty low, like right just above the trees, the tree tops, two balls of light came and did a cross right over top where I was standing out in this field. So I'm like, okay, well, these two things are connected. And at that time, I thought that the balls of white light were UFOs. Now I'm not so sure. I don't know because, almost 12 years later, I've experienced the Sasquatch in their shape-shifting ways, and that they do travel in an orb form. So was that were those two UFOs that crossed over me, or was it something else orb related to the Sasquatch, especially since I had them right behind me? And so that was June of 2013, and it got my attention fully. I was like, well, this, I have to learn as much as I can about this. I have to, this is so close, literally, like they're just right in the trees. So
did you have, Ashley, when, by the way, I always say peace as well. That's always my mode of language. But did you have any actually like vibratory feelings in your body? Did you feel anything or did you sense anything in your mind? Was there any telepathic connection, or is it just the guttural sounds you heard?
For that first experience, it was just the guttural sounds. Mm-hmm. And something that I've learned along this journey is that they're not going to give you more than you can take. They're not going to put you in a situation that's going to melt your brain because of how far out and how multidimensional the experience is going to be. I have gotten to that part and those points now, but it's been a gradual experience for me. And it shows their compassion, that they wouldn't just jam someone's brain up with a super crazy experience to where it would be harmful, So
I think it's. I was just going to make a quick comment. It's interesting that there's good evidence that UFOs themselves are not from other places, mm-hmm. from outer space or someplace, but they're actually interdimensionals.
Yes.
And also had some experience with that kind of communication myself within other groups of people, not just myself, and actually having a very demonstrable two-way communication established between these ships. There's a guy by the name of Trevor Constable that wrote a book. He was following the work of Wilhelm Reich, as well as some other folks in the Arizona desert who made it their business to communicate with these interdimensionals full time. So I'll let you continue, but it's just kind of interesting that we keep getting more and more breadcrumbs that all of this phenomena is actually around us all the time. It's just within other dimensions that we have to train ourselves to tune into. So is there any connection between the UFOs, and I'm sure you'll get to that, and Squatch himself, or are they just different separate entities existing in those dimensions? And I use the word dimensions loosely because we can define that in different ways.
Yeah, totally. And yes, at this point, I have I used to do a mental tally of how many UFOs I had seen. And I did that starting in around when we moved up here, 2010, 2011 is probably when I started doing this mental tally. And I quit doing that in 2021. And as of 7/24/21, I had a mental tally of seeing over 1,149 UFOs since 2010,
Wow.
2011. So that number has increased to probably, over 1,500 at this point in 2024. So, and I am at a place now where we aren't dealing with someone who's coming from light years away from some, distant place. Absolutely not. Like they're here. And I would say that there's more activity going underneath the ground than we could ever truly understand. And that it is, and we're all sharing this space, and there is something dimensionally about it to where there's just layers and layers and layers of existence within this space dimensionally. And yeah, when we're raising our frequency or lowering our frequency, we're going to come in contact with those different beings and entities. And it's it's shown itself to be very, very real in that way with the Sasquatch and the different things that they can do, and the different things that they show us. They'll show us, yes, we can do these things. And then you got to sit back and try to answer 1,000 questions that come off of like a 10-second experience with them. So yeah, this is a dimensional thing. The UFO, I say star people because it's just it just as a placeholder. Mm-hmm. I've never experienced a totally conscious telepathic situation where I'm hearing a voice that's saying, hello, I'm so and so, and this is where I'm from, and this is what we're doing. I've never had that. And I haven't had that with the Sasquatch either. But absolutely, with the speed of thought, there will be a recognition from the the orbs of light that are flying across the sky when I send out a greeting, or if I send out a salutation of love or thank you. If I say thank you, they will get bigger and brighter in response, right? So there is, they know what's going on up here, but I'm not engaged in a back and forth conversation. And I think, again, that's good for me. You don't need to have that as like an aspect. I think it would be a distraction. And so it hasn't been presented to me. It has to other people. I know other people.
I think it's important to note that language and what we think as telepathy doesn't necessarily convey into language, which is more of a linear programmed thought pattern. And real telepathy is direct resonance that you feel in a unified heart-mind situation, and understanding does not come through words.
Correct.
So what you're describing seems completely congruous with what I believe these interdimensionals and how they would communicate. You just have to be an individual that can decipher with your feelings, not your brain, what the communication is actually all about.
Correct. It is absolutely a heart-based communication that does not require language as we use. And a concept that has been expressed within me and my Bigfoot and friends is just the knowing. It is a knowing that you have internally, and it's fully all together in one expression. You know what's going on. It doesn't take the linear time of a sentence getting to the finish, for you to figure it out. You just know in the moment what's going on.
And with that kind of communication, there's no interpretation necessary. and no confusion as far as trying to decipher what somebody means with words. So
Totally.
much more efficient. Yeah.
Very efficient. Yes. And so yeah, I had that first experience back and forth and the orbs crossing over. And it's interesting too that that the two orbs did a cross right over top, an X over top right where I was standing. Because now looking at the structures that they make, looking at the glyphs that they'll leave, the X has been interpreted by some to be a warning or like a stay out, and I think that's more of like a human idea that's been placed upon that, a human fear or a connection to the X. What we've found in our connections with the Sasquatch is when they leave an X, when they show an X, it's a greeting and it's a hello and it's a welcome. So that first experience I had the orbs going over in a welcome sign, but I didn't figure that out until many years later. So 2013, I'm like, okay, this is important, and I'm going to put a lot of my time and energy into learning everything that I can about the Sasquatch people, and that I was in the perfect place to do so. The Pacific Northwest, right? There's a lot of different places up here where you just step outside and you're in their homelands. So I started doing that. I started connecting with other people who were in like-minded camps of these are higher dimensional beings. They're people. They have families. There's a level of respect that goes into reaching through the veil to connect with them, and doing so honorably and respectfully. And then that led to meeting a lot of cool people, going on a lot of cool camping trips. And then around 2015, 2016, I learned about Barb Shoop and her YouTube channel, where she was documenting the Bigfoot activity she was having locally at her cabin and at her home in a super tiny place called Greenwater in Washington. And when I found this on YouTube, I was glued. I was like, man, these people are real. This is the real deal. They're talking. And it was great because everybody would have their experiences. And then the next morning around the campfire, Barb would just go around with all the campers and talk about what they experienced. And so it's just a really black and white reporting of some very supernatural high level stuff going on with this group of mostly retired, mostly women campers just going out and having a good time, right? It's not about setting up cameras and trying to get evidence and trickery, and because you will never trick a Sasquatch. You can't. There's no possible way that you could pull one over on a Sasquatch. They are that highly psychic, and when you step into the forest, they know everything about you. And when I say this, like, really integrate it into your system. It's not just that they know what your tendencies might be or where your energy is at that moment or your auric field or whatever. They know every single thing about you, your life, your family, every instance of experience you've had in your life. They know everything about you. And when one Sasquatch knows you, they all know you, because they are sharing in a collective consciousness that is leaps and bounds above where we're at currently.
Can we let that just sink in for a second? Because that's something I've been talking about of late on my Substack, is like, if we ever do want to actually have governance or a true democracy, that's what we require. Complete psychic connection with no lying. right? Like then I'll have someone represent me because I know they have good intentions and they're actually going to do some good governance and be good statesmen. Until then, F you, I'm not voting. But that being said, that is it's like it's hard for us to wrap our heads around that kind of connection and that kind of openness, right? Like there are no secrets.
No secrets. No secrets. Don't even think
Well,
you can pull one over.
in the original Ascended Master teachings, they, elaborate greatly on the fact that humanity does possess all of those attributes. And we've had certain overlays placed upon us that, are veiling who we really are. So, with that in mind, does it seem to be through your experience that Sasquatch is actually fulfilling a purpose to help mankind get back to their original nature?
Um, I've never had one tell me what their purpose is, or I can't say totally for sure as to why they are expressing and doing so in this realm. Within the people that my elders, the elders in my community who have had 60 plus years of contact, communication, student teacher relationship with them, and what they have been told is well, it's like we're having our own experience here. We're having a human experience. They're having their own experience as well, and that they choose to be here. They choose to be in this physicality of this particular dimension of Earth expression, but they're also walking between the worlds. That's one of the ways that they are known, and they are the ones who walk between the worlds. They are going through this dimension and other potential dimensions of this place. And but there is an aspect of them loving the physical earth. They love being in nature. They love interacting with nature. If we're talking about, in which we're talking about a people who have complete capacity over the fluctuation and frequency of their atoms, and they can manipulate their physical form into literally, as far as I'm concerned, anything they want to, not just an orb of light, not just a tree stump, not just a deer, but also humans. They can take on a human form, and they can cloak.
Can we maybe we can elaborate a little bit more on that? Shape shifting seems like a real far out concept, I understand. I can't do it myself, but there seem to be many accounts from indigenous people where that is just commonplace as far as being able to do that. Now, if we kind of go from there into maybe something that the Western mind could grasp, we could maybe go into waveform mechanics and understand how our consciousness creates every outpicturing moment by moment. Now, if we look at, say, myself and my phase of life, my appearance is based on an accumulative, just a collective of experience, we'll say, and a belief system that's the appearance that you get at a certain time of your life. Well, what if you're not living in a linear time sequence and you're living in the moment, and that if you can take on the resonance 100% of another life form, then it would be very explainable how your form would change in that moment to reflect what your consciousness is focused on. So any more you could add to that, or do you agree with that?
It's so multi-layered, because however they're doing it, there is something that they can physically do and physically change their body, and that they're also choosing an avatar that's so adept to moving through nature in a good way, right? Like that's like a primary way that they express themselves. even though they can express themselves in many different ways. It seems like living in the physical nature, enjoying physical things like eating and drinking and taking shelter and movement and all of that. They are doing it physically, but there is something strange along with that too, where they're bending physicality while they're doing it. And where does where does that go, right? Where does that go with who they are and why they are deciding to do what they do. And it's also not just that they can do these things with their body, but they can also manipulate your brain to perceive something that isn't there. So when we talk about there's a lot of reports where people will be
kind
walking.
of like what our government does. Yeah.
Hey. Yeah, there's a lot of reports where people will see like a large tree stump, but it has flowing hair, and it's backlit by the sun and they can't really see it all that much, but then they go back to try to find that tree stump and that tree stump isn't there, right? And why did that tree stump
I
have,
get that sometimes.
right? I know, like that'll happen with that hair.
It is
There's
interesting, the physicality, like why do they have this sort of animalistic sensibility sometimes with the guttural calling, the throwing of things? Like, so I've told this story before on the show where I've been in the middle of the bush with my kids and got a weird feeling driving on this Forest Service road, like way out in the mountains, deep in like a pretty dense forest area, and then a huge stump was hit our side of my truck, like very loud, like it was thrown at us. And my dog was with us. She was like not the usual barking self, was like, okay, this is weird, let's move on. And then when we were coming on the way back, I looked through the forest where it had happened and I saw a structure about 50 feet in that looked like sort of a bunch of sticks that were made into a teepee.
teepee.
And so it's just like that. So when people see that stuff, they think this sounds like sort of very, doesn't sound advanced. It doesn't sound like some entity that is morphing through time and is trying to help us. It sounds like some kind of caveman type beast creature. So there does seem to be a paradox of sorts with with Bigfoot, right? And I think maybe that's what you're getting at there, but it is curious, like the physicality, then also the non-physicality nature of them.
The type of structure you just described is also something that is seen often. I've seen one that was like the tree itself in the middle was I believe it was a Douglas fir that probably would have been 3 or 4 grown men holding hands to get the circumference around it. And then there was trees that had been stripped completely of all of their limbs that were 60 feet tall, all within a teepee around this central one. I've totally seen that before. And so there's this aspect of they are able to manipulate their bodies, and that there's an aspect that they can also manipulate your brain. So they can do Jedi mind tricks. And I've experienced that absolutely, to where even just this last camp out in September, I had this overwhelming urge to sing a line of a song while I was in my tent. And because I did that, it set up this whole other list of events that happened afterwards that dominoed and led to me having a sighting. And but yeah, they can manipulate themselves, and then they can also manipulate you to do something, to say something, to feel something, or to not feel something, or to smell something, or to see something. A lot of where I'm at with my contemplation about the smells. A lot of times people will say, I just smelled the worst skunky, crazy, feces rolled in whatever
It's a nasty,
smell.
I've had the experience. It smells like a rotting dead animal with
Yeah.
skunk and garbage. I've told that story before where I feel like we were being visited by Sasquatch. I told you before we went live, like we'd have this weird instance in our house where it stunk like something was dead in our walls. And I would get my wife and we were like trying to figure out where this was coming from. And then it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would be at a different part of the house. And it was always at nighttime. And it was around the time when I was really into getting into Bigfoot again. So were we being visited? God, was this some stinky
Yes.
beast visiting us?
Absolutely. And I don't think that they necessarily have that the smell that you smelled is not because of personal hygiene issues, but I think it has more to do with they're able to manipulate your brain to smell those things, because it's not just nasty smells that get smelled. When the females come in close, there is floral bouquets, the most beautiful smells of baked berry pies, the most beautiful
Ooh.
smells of mint fields, the most beautiful smells of these bouquets of flowers.
I'm
And
laughing right now because actually I'm just thinking of like a perfume commercial of Bigfoot like prancing in the prairie, and it's like
yeah,
buried by Sasquatch.
berry pie.
Yeah.
Yes.
by-
So then that when I started learning about that too, I was like, well, yeah, man, it doesn't really seem like they don't have a belt filled with aerosol cans of good smells and bad smells, and that they're, making it smell from, or even excreting these smells of bouquets or garbage or whatever. But with their super psychic abilities, I bet that they can manipulate your brain into perceiving those smells. Right?
Well, I would say it's funny when what I've been studying with Thinking in Destiny and Percival, he talks about what senses actually are, which are related to the elementals. And so, which in smell specifically to the digestive system and to the earth plane. And so, when these very tapped in earth creatures, which you're right, they're very tapped into the earth, right? And the mother Gaia here and all of that idea. So, they can easily manipulate those elementals to play with whatever they want within your neurology. And so, yeah, they can have you smell whatever they want you to have you smell.
Yeah, and another perspective on that is with the work of Steiner and, riffing off Goethe, they understood that our sensory apparatus was not really picking up external sounds and the other things that our senses pick up on, but our internal senses are always interfaced with a water element. For instance, our eyes are filled with water. Sound is actually registered not in the ear portion of the ear canal, but in the inner part that has the water in there, and then that creates a reverberation. Our brain, of course, is bathed with fluids, and we have the internal canals in our brain, and it all connects by way of our emotions. And they explain how the water element is the emotional ether, so to speak. It's the thing that really gives things velocity to pop in our matrix. And so I believe, I don't know, a little conjecture is that they're operating on that emotional realm, which then can manipulate all that you're talking about, including, how our senses are actually perceiving on that emotional plane and not in our external reality the way we think it is. And in humanity's present state of stupor, I don't think it's anything that far-fetched to imagine that someone who is still in touch with their telepathic or their real potentials would have any problem manipulating the average, folk out there. Probably be pretty easy. Again, just like the government does, just like the media does, and we fall for it anytime. So with that, and sorry, just one last question. Did you, in your personal experience or in your accounts from other people, ever pick up anything that would suggest mischievous intentions from them?
Well, I there's lots of people have lots of stories of lots of different types of interactions with them. right? And it can be very or at least like the experience for a person can they can be very scared about the circumstances surrounding an experience, and I think it has a lot to do with the person, more so than the experience, and what type of filters they have with the experience. Because Mike, like you said, you had a stump thrown at your vehicle, right? And someone who was in a super fear-based place could be like, I tried to go to the woods and then they started throwing things at me, and it was my life was in danger and I got out of there on the skin of my teeth, type of situation. But that was just that was a filter, right, of fear from an experience where you weren't hurt. You might have had a warning to get out of that situation or to get out of that area, and that could have been for your own benefit, not
Well, I
necessarily
actually
for
have a
them.
theory on that, Ashley. So I believe because they're so hyper psychic and are tapped into the Akashic, really, they can see all. They're super tapped into their higher self and the infinite self. So they can relate to and see all of our past deeds and thoughts. And so if we karmically we are at a certain place and level where we need to have a lesson taught or be treated in a certain way, they have no problem doing that. And so it's interesting. The whole point of me going out in the bush is I with my kids is I was looking for a space to throw a dance party out, a full moon dance, because I'm a DJ, a full moon dance party on this property that's way out there. And they're probably like, Bigfoot doesn't want to rage are going on here. Okay, so get the hell out of my forest, you stupid white boy. And through no, but anyways, that's the idea, is like, because you hear these stories, because I listen to a couple YouTube channels of this guy who drinks his coffee and tells all these stories that are sent into him, right? And there's some frightful stories of people that are tracked and then people have gone missing. And it's a question of like, what has that person done? Was that person a child sex trafficker, a murderer or something in the past, or even in that life? And maybe there's a sense of justice that Sasquatch has. I don't know.
I think that there's so the ones that I have interacted with have been highly, highly psychic, highly, highly spiritual, highly, highly loving, compassionate, family oriented, and like the highs of all the positives.
Amazing.
And the interactions that I have had have been on those levels. And so that's why it's interesting to me when there's people who do have these pretty scary encounters, or we do hear stories of people going missing. I can't equate everything to Sasquatch that's happening, that's wrong in the forest. And in fact, at this point, it's like I know there's a lot more going on in the forest than just the Sasquatch, and they're not all nice. Like not all entities are nice, and however it works to where we know that there's energy coming off of the earth, and that there's ley lines, and that there's ways that can be manipulated. Humans manipulate the earth energies, and we do it inside cities, and we do it with our structures and all of that. When you remove all of that and you're going into the matrix of the forest without any type of human harnessed aspect of the energy in there, how thin are the veils? How thin are the veils on that completely, I am 100% immersed in nature, and then what can come through in that environment. So with there being a lot of other reports of mischievous behavior, or maybe a frightening experience, or any of that, I do know it seems to be from people within my community. They've said this, and I trust what they say. This there's an aspect of like super highly psychic Sasquatch, and then it kind of like runs down the line to Sasquatch who are not using their psychic abilities whatsoever. They're not teaching their children the psychic abilities. They're staying in a very, very physical reality, and they're experiencing just a very, very physical experience.
I was thinking normie Sasquatch.
Kind of, right? Like if you're thinking about it, yeah, think about it with humans, like humans who are looking into and experiencing a higher dimensional reality here compared to humans who are not having a multidimensional reality here. And does that equate to, in certain areas where maybe there's more of a physical Sasquatch, and their interactions with people will be more territorial, will be more on that physical, and
Wow.
you know what I mean?
Love that idea. So maybe these are like the fallen ones, or ones that have lost their own way because they're all.
Well, I don't necessarily see as like, if we had evil Sasquatch, we'd be done. You know what I mean?
No, I mean fallen in that they've lost that connection to their pure essence, so they are more stuck in materiality and maybe lost and confused, and
they're doing it on purpose, is what I understand.
Really,
they're willfully choosing a less psychic experience, and they're willfully choosing to not teach their children that, so that they can have a more physical experience here.
So they're choosing the matrix state.
I mean, that's it's a bit different compared for like a human matrix compared to the Sasquatch matrix, right? But if you could maybe compare it to a more animalistic nature, like of the deer and of the elk and of the bear and of the cougar, that they'd rather experience nature in that total capacity instead of this higher frequency multidimensional aspect. And again, like, that's all that I've really experienced in go ahead.
Living in nature increases intelligence. Artificial living, as we do in urban centers, is an IQ killer for sure. So living in nature doesn't necessarily mean opting for a lesser animalistic experience. And we live in a very kind of a wilderness setting, and so we go days and days without even talking to people and interacting directly. And the veils are very, very thin, when you live that kind of lifestyle. So anyway, yeah, I would just throw out that if they are choosing to experience, the way they do it, we shouldn't say that all of a sudden that's means animalistic and lesser or lower intelligence. It's actually probably the opposite. And if you just even watched animals in a natural state that are not bipeds and do not have the same potentials, they are still very tapped in and aware, and left on their own would not be aggressive or vicious or anything of the sort. There's a whole different intelligence. And of course, you learn that when you live with them. So if there's in fact a choice to enter the physical realm, well, that's why we did it in the first place. And I believe we lost our way and did a lot of forgetting along the way, and had a lot of help to help us forget. So
I would say too, there's an allure to
natural.
Yeah, there's an allure to it. If you're this strong, powerful creature here in the physicality and are built to thrive in a place like the forests, as Sasquatch are, it's a pretty sweet life, I assume.
I'd appreciate it for sure, especially with their physicality and being able to properly manage the wild nature of the forest, because man, nature doesn't forgive. Like, nature is neutral. Nature doesn't have forgiveness. You know what I mean? Like, nature can be like, just like, will rip you apart, and that's just part of nature. That's just, but they're built for it. They're built for it.
Yeah. You can't fool Mother Nature or Sasquatch.
Yeah.
So while we're into the physicality aspect of it, do you have any indications of lifestyle factors with them, for instance, dietary habits and so forth?
I know that they do eat meat. They hunt. They hunt elk and deer, and it seems like they have migratory patterns that allow for feeding throughout the year. So the Sasquatch that live up in the mountainous areas of Washington will come down to the coastlines and during winter. There's a town called Ocean Shores, which is it's got casinos and hotels like and beach houses. That's it. And it's a pretty popular place during the summertime, and at wintertime it loses, I think, 3/4 of its population. So it becomes very scarcely populated by humans during wintertime, but all the Sasquatch go there during wintertime. And it's like there's more sightings in Ocean Shores than any other place in Washington, and there's more sightings in Washington than there is in any other place in the world. So
it's their Florida.
It is their Florida. They go and people see them. They're just amazing, amazing sightings and experiences that the locals have had with the Sasquatch throughout the generations. And there does seem to be a genetic link between us and them. There is a mitochondrial link that has been documented, but the other side of those genetics is unknown. And you cannot find them in the genetic mapping. So that's who we know who they are genetically, at least, is that we have a connection to them, and then they have a connection to something that we don't know what that is.
So in your research, have you ever been able to link up all the different, they are known by different names in different cultures, but in Himalayas and all different parts of the world, they have, of course, not the same folks here, or do you think there's different species?
I think that there's definitely there's differences between them, just as there are differences between humans, and and we can see the evolution of the physical body in response to the different environments. It seems like they have an evolutionary response in their physicality to their certain environments. And so you will have a specific body type up here compared to a body type that lives in the swamps or in other types of forests or the deserts or wherever. And it's not just the forested areas where there's trees as to where you're going to find the Sasquatch. When I went, in April, I did a cross-country trip to Oklahoma to witness the eclipse. And on the way home, I stopped in Santa Fe, and it was the first time I'd ever stepped foot on that land. And within 45 minutes, I was speaking to an orb out in the desert, where my friend, lives 20 miles outside of the city. And I stepped outside, and it was 12:15 in the morning, and I'm there's an orb that's 180 feet away. I was able to measure it on Google Earth later, and that was an interaction with a being that I'm pretty sure it was Sasquatch in an orb form. It left me a gift that I went and picked up the next day once I figured out where I was looking at, at nighttime. The next day we went to that area, and there was a rock, a smoky quartz that had been left on top of the pine needles from the juniper trees that had created this domed area that you could walk inside of. And then sitting on the ground on top of all of the needles from the tree was a smoky quartz in the shape of a Sasquatch head with a face on it.
Did you have psychic like any communion or discussion with the orb, or just a feeling? Or
we pulled up to the house at 11:30, and everyone was asleep, and we pulled our stuff out of the truck and set it in the guest rooms real quiet. I went out front, and it was totally pitch black, and I had never been there before, so I don't know what the landscape looks like. And I was at the bed of the truck at the tailgate, And I looked over, and then there was this orb, and it's like eye level, and without knowing what the landscape looked like, without knowing that, I did see like the deviation of darkness with like a mountain range. And I thought this light was on the mountain range, right? But I was standing there, and I telepathed to it, and I said, "Can I film you? Can I film you?" And then it blinked on and off, right? And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes." And so I brought my camera up, my phone, and I started filming it, and I whispered to it. I said, "Can you turn off?" Boom, it turned off.
Wow.
And I'm like, "Oh shit." It's like, "Can you turn back on?" Boom, it turned back on. And then it kind of like flashed like it was laughing, or like it had fun, and I was having fun. And I got that on film. It's on the video on my YouTube channel. And again, yeah, like the next day I go out and I see this rock. I'm like, and there was manipulation of the branches. There was some twisting around of the branches in these juniper trees. And then right here, this is the rock. I'll show you the rock. So
Wow.
this is a there's so much to this. Let's talk about how psychic and weird it can get. I find this rock. If you can see, there is a piece of this rock right here that's been popped up, and it looks like an eye. And then there's a smiley face, right? It has a conical head, right? So when I picked this rock up, or actually, sorry, when I had the experience with the orb the night before, I had this rock in my pocket. And this rock is a quartz that I picked up in Oklahoma at my friend's place, where she had a friend. It's like all of our Bigfoot and friends got together for the first time. It was the first time that some of us had even seen each other in person, right? And we all gathered at our friend Arla's land in Oklahoma, and our friend Ginger came down from Georgia. This crystal, this citrine crystal, quartz crystal, was one that she picked up off of her land, and she brought a bunch of these rocks to the gathering, and she told me, "Hey, here's these rocks, pick out one that you feel connected to." And so I picked this one out, and I kept this one in my pocket. And then, like, I think it was the next day, I was walking with Ginger on the property, and she told me about one of her favorite experiences with the Sasquatch, which was experienced with a mutual friend of ours named Sam. And they were walking, this was in Georgia, and they were walking at night down a wooded path, and they had a Sasquatch in front of them on the path. And they were just staring at each other. So he turns to walk away, and Sam said under his breath in a whisper, he said, "Please don't go." And when he did that, the Sasquatch turned his head and stared at them. But at this point, he had one of his eyes beaming out a beam of light. Okay. And then it started going like strobing. And he looks at him like this, the beam's coming out of the eye, and then he turns and he walks away, and he's gone. So that was what she's telling me, this story about this Sasquatch that had this beam of white light coming out of its eye. I had this stone in my pocket. When I get to Santa Fe, I find this stone after having an experience with an orb. Guess what? Every single one of the angles and pretty much the shape of these two are exactly the same. They're exactly the same. And if you can see that there's a dark stripe of the yellow right here, and there is in the same spot a dark stripe of the smoky quartz. And if you look at this one, I told you there was one eye and a smiley face. What was I talking about with Ginger, and what did she tell me? That the Sasquatch had one eye illuminated. So when I was looking at this rock later, when I came home, this is old and weathered. This side is old and weathered. This is old and weathered. This is not. This has been snapped. So someone snapped this to create this perfect shape that would mimic this shape, and had all that information stuck in it, with experiences thousands of miles away. So there's this full knowing that they have. And the ways in which they gift us, it's like, you know, peel back the onion layers, because there's so much more than just a rock that got dropped in your space.
So, what is it about these orbs? A long time ago, I was taken under the wing by this gentleman who is from a indigenous culture, and he was trained from birth to be what we would consider a shaman these days. And for whatever reason, I had a very intensive, long training with him. And the very first time I met him, I ended up, and he lived out in the boonies, but I ended up just sleeping outside his little hut there. And what was amazing is in the trees under where I was sleeping, there's these very prominent orbs, which I didn't know what I was looking at the time. Now, this was a gentleman who's very tapped in and could do a lot of things that we're even attributing to Sasquatch. So, which is why I have a belief system that certain indigenous cultures have that knowledge, you know, that's passed on to certain select people within their population. And so that became just a common thing because I, you know, did a lot of sleepovers and everything during, you know, my training with him. And there's always these orbs every single time. And I just kind of chalked it up. I even asked him, you know, Grandpa about it, like, and he just kind of loosely explain that there are elementals and angelic beings and, you know, people that he worked with. And that's why they're always congregated around him as well. So in your own experience, I would imagine since you had so many encounters, that you have just maybe a temperament or a resonance about you that would allow them to have more of a direct communication. So does it seem like that Sasquatch experiences are mostly encountered by people that are a little bit more open themselves in certain ways?
The deeper ones, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can have just a very surface experience with the Sasquatch where you see one run across the road in 1975 and you never have an experience ever again. And maybe that's all you needed for your growth. You know what I mean?
Right.
Again, there's that aspect that they're not going to give you more than you can handle.
Yeah, we get a lot of those kind of stories around here with just regular people and, you know, just really graphic descriptions of, you know, the fact that it was a real sighting.
Yeah,
So,
literally coming up from like a creek bed and looking at him in full Sasquatch right there across the street when they were 12 years old, regular Joe plumber, right? And then never again.
yeah. And so what's the difference between Joe Plumber and myself? I definitely, I think there's an aspect of you have to see it to believe it, and you have to believe it to see it, right? You have to be open to higher experiences to have higher experiences, and that there's also there's a bit of personal responsibility. There's a lot of personal responsibility. If anyone wants to put their big toe into the supernatural realm, which is what we're living in, we are living in a supernatural realm. No other way about it. If we have one tiny little aspect of supernatural experience in this realm, then the entire thing is supernatural. And boy, do we have a lot of supernatural stuff happening in this realm, right? But it's not forced upon anyone in this kind of like free will playground. It's not fully forced upon anyone how weird this place is, but if you put your Bigfoot in it, then you're going to find out. And there needs to be needs to be a personal responsibility to cleansing yourself and getting yourself ready to do these things and to have these experiences and have them be the most high vibe that they can be, right? So
Well, you're being exposed to your greater potentials, and of course, when you start exercising those, there is a responsibility. I agree with everything you're saying, but I would reverse it and say that the hypnotic life that most of us live within our version of the Matrix is actually the supernatural, and maybe what you're describing with Sasquatch and that realm is actually the natural.
Yeah.
I would just kind of reverse the terms.
I agree with you too. I mean, like the inversion in this world is very palpable and real, and we can see where it's at. And is the supernatural expression of this place more in alignment with what it is? Absolutely. We don't have gobs and gobs of folklore and mythology and even in religious texts and your most popular to your not very popular ways of looking all of this, it's all in there, right? Like what the reality that we're taught today that doesn't include the supernatural is an absolute inversion of the reality of this place, which is psychic, supernatural, all of that, right? So I totally agree with you on that.
I do want to get into something else. Maybe we'll end with fairies, because I know you have an interesting experience. And I totally now believe in fairies, mainly due to some very interesting folks in Ireland who, anyways, I don't want to get into that right now, but we can maybe end on that, because that's, once again, like Sasquatch opens up the portal to all these other, areas of magic and wonder in this amazing realm that we're in. But just to kind of, well, couple 2 points. One, the quartz rocks is really interesting, because as Bear described on his talk at Music and Sky with Grandpa Elder, the idea that this quartz, these crystals hold information. So they're giving you like a Sasquatch flash memory card, right?
Yes.
That has maybe a lot of really special information you need to learn how to tap into and pull out of. And then, so I'd love to touch on that real quick. And then two, if we could just also go back a little bit to the genetics comment, because I know there's like been some stories about actual like hair found and taken to labs. Curious if that's what you're getting at there, and is there actual like, this is for the skeptics out there, because I think it's good to have healthy skepticism whenever we're going into this stuff. And so I'm just curious if that's what you're getting at when it comes to actual like understanding where the genetics is coming from.
Yeah, the genetics part of it, most well known, has been studied by Dr. Melba Ketchum, and she's had hundreds, if not thousands, of specimens of hair and salivas and different things sent to her, and she's done that testing. And in A Flash of Beauty, you had Tobe Johnson as well, who he didn't get to take him to the super high places that Melba does in terms of the testing. I think he went through like a veterinarian situation, but it was still the same type of results, that it was an unknown situation going on with the hair. And it's like there's more evidence of them existing than there is evidence to support them not existing. You know what I mean? There's way more evidence of them being here.
Just ask the Beastie Boys that story. Someone brought that up in chat, that the Beastie Boys were supposedly kidnapped by Bigfoot, by Sasquatch.
Oh boy, I didn't know that.
Yeah, according to various accounts, Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch, allegedly kidnapped the Beastie Boys, a renowned American hip-hop group. This bizarre incident is said to have occurred when the band members were out of the public eye, leading to speculation about their disappearance. There's like a whole lore around that. Anyways.
I've never heard that. Well, I will say this, the Sasquatch love music. They absolutely love music. And that's one of the ways that I connect with them. I'm a musician, and I will go out and bring my guitar and sing them songs. And it's pretty amazing what happens later on that night, when they come in and get into camp and visit. There's a total interaction. There's an appreciation for music that they have.
Have you caught any footprints, taken pictures of prints? And the other thing, I'm just kind of counter all the skeptic stuff, because I think it's good to counter it. Like, why has no one found bones? Why is there no scat? Now I know people that have seen scat.
I have.
Okay. And then I have a neighbor here. She's old school that lived in this town for 65 years, and she has pictures of prints. I've had
Yep.
hunters show me pictures of prints, footprints, and she has castings actually of prints in her house. But anyways,
Yep. I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of footprints, particularly at this one spot. It was in September of 2018, where there was the first rain of September, the first big rain, and we were at a lake, and the lake bed had kind of dried off and created the banks of just like this perfect substrate. And it rained and it collected all of that, and then everybody came out and played that night, and we went there the next day. We got a butt print. There was a hole that had been dug, and you could see where a female individual had sat on the edge, and the feet were in the hole, and they were pulling up these wads of mud and gunk from the sides of where they were sitting, and they were chucking it at this massive 100-year-old tree stump. So I've seen the footprints. I've seen a butt print, which the butt print was really, really telling, because we could absolutely tell that it came from a female. That the genitalia had been imprinted, and one of the ladies who was with us when we discovered that, she was a nurse like her whole career, and she was retired, and she had knowledge when it came to the physical body, and she was looking at the print, and she was like, there's a bone right there in between the anus and the vaginal slit that we don't have, that humans don't have. So there's a lot of similarities within the physicality, but there are differences. There are absolute differences. There's the length of their arms in compared to the length of their legs in comparison to ours. They have a mid-tarsal break in their foot, right? So their foot can do this, and that's just really good for climbing and for moving very fast. The foot can do this and bend in on itself. We've got.
Do they have the same number of digits that we have?
Yes and no, because we have absolutely found 6 toes and 4 toes and 3 toes, but mostly 5. But there are anomalies, and yeah.
There's whole theories that there's different, different races of the Sasquatch, right? That there's different colored furs and different sizes and shapes, and
I think the different color hair is just kind of the same as we have different color hair. I don't think that all the reds are within a subcategory and all the whites are within a subcategory and all the blacks are in a subcategory. I think it's just like the genetic difference, and these will, this one was born with red hair. I had my first sighting this past September. So starting this journey in 2013 with that hoo-wah behind me, and then diving headfirst and having a huge plethora of different paranormal, off the charts, crazy shit going on in the forest at these campouts. It's only until now, this past September, that I had my first full physical sighting without obstruction. Wow. And it was of a juvenile. I've had them right next to my tent. I've had them right on the other side. I've had them do energetic work on me. I've had them save my life from a cougar attack. And it's like they had the pre-knowledge that this was going to happen. And they warned me in before like hours before the experience happened. I've had all of that. Like, I've felt their energy. They've done the energy work on me, but I hadn't had the physical sighting. And then this past September, I had, it was like kind of one after another. I had two physical sightings of hands coming down the tent, the back tent wall of while I was in the tent during the day. You know, I see these perfect hands coming down, swiping. And then on September the 13th is when I had my first sighting of this juvenile who was between 5 and 7 feet tall. He was totally pitch black from head to toe. He was in the middle of the Forest Service road. This is right at dusk. And so I had a perfect view, no obstruction. It's super dark inside the trees, but it's nicely lit up still on this Forest Service road. And I had been standing there, and I was waiting for some friends who were in conversation behind me, maybe about 50 feet away. And I was just in this like super zenned out place. Like I was very balanced. And because I thought about that afterwards, I was like, where was I mentally when this happened? You know, well, I was in this like just very balanced, awesome zen place standing on the road. And I heard a snap on the right hand side of the road inside the trees. I heard this snap and I was like, that's Sasquatch related. That sounded like a Sasquatch snap. And then I turned my gaze and I looked over this way and I looked down into the valley where the camp was. And then I'm staring there for about 30 seconds. And then I bring my gaze back up down the road, and now he's standing in the middle of the road. And his head's down and his arms are to his side. And he does this 360 circling, shuffle walk. And I'm staring at him, looking at him like, you're black from head to toe. There's no deviation in color. You aren't wearing clothing, you know? He didn't have the conical head. We know, you know, we have these like the sightings of the large and fully developed Sasquatch. They have these conical heads, right? They have the elongated conical heads, and he didn't have that. I thought he was between 5 to 7 feet tall. I thought maybe he was 13 years old or so. When he did that circle, he did this circle, and then he walked off the road down the embankment into the trees. And at that moment, when he took the step and extended his leg, that's when I was like, okay, point number 2, that's a long leg. Like that is a long leg. He's black from head to toe. And then he just stepped into, you know, down this embankment into the trees, and he didn't have a headlamp, and he didn't, you know, there was no hesitation. He did it without hesitation. He didn't need a headlamp. We would have absolutely needed a headlamp, and we would have crashed through there and made a lot of noise. He didn't. And he was only about 40 feet away from me.
So you're saying like if it was somebody trying to prank you in a monkey suit?
No one's out there besides us.
But I'm saying if somebody was, they would, even if they were in a monkey suit, they would be like running into trees and being
there's bushes, there's, you know, there's all sorts of material and forest stuff right off of this pretty, you know, steep embankment that went down into the forested area. And he would have needed, if he was a human, he would have needed light. And I'll tell you how crazy this gets. So I was standing there because the night before, on that Thursday, Barb, this was one of Barb Shoop's camps, and it was about 10 o'clock. So this is Thursday around 10 o'clock. We're all by the fire, and Barb says, I'm going to go to bed. And she will go over to the snack table. She'll take all the snacks off the table, and then in the little wagon that she has, she'll take it over to her campsite and then put all of the food items into her vehicle, inside the vehicle for the night, so there's no critters getting to them. So she said goodnight. She went and got all that stuff, and she goes and heads over to where her campsite is, which is right off of this Forest Service road where the next day I would have this experience. So she puts the food away. She walks around her tent, and she looks up and she sees me walking up the road going towards where I had my tent. And she just sees me, and she said that I was just wearing my clothes, like my normal clothes, and I had a cigarette in my hand, and she could see the light of the ember as my arm was moving like this as I'm walking up there. She thinks nothing of it. She goes to bed. The next day, which is that Friday, earlier in the day, we meet up at the campfire, and she says something about, oh yeah, like I saw when I went to bed, I saw you go to bed too. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, you went to bed. I saw you. You had a cigarette and you were walking up towards your tent. I said, Barb, I didn't go to bed until like 40 minutes after you did. I was still over by the campfire, and I never went up to my camp like that. And when I did go up to the camp for the evening, I had a drum in my hand. I had drumsticks. I had a coffee cup. I had a water bottle. I had a thermos, and I didn't have a cigarette in my hand. I don't smoke like and walk around like that. And I had my headlamp around my neck to illuminate. She's like, no, what I saw was just you walking with a cigarette in your hand. I said, all right, well, it wasn't me. And this mimic, like I said,
that was like Sasquatch with a spliff or what?
It was a mimic of me. It was an absolute mimic of me. My jacket, my pants, everything was like undeniably me, but it wasn't me. So Friday, when when we learn this, when we figure it out, and again, it's not the first time that we've been mimicked like that. And we've had a Sasquatch mimicking us while we're in a group of people. Other, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Barb says, well, tonight when it gets dark, let's recreate this event, and I'll stand where I was standing, and then you go up there and recreate how you're moving on the road, and I'll see if that's what it looked like. So right before dusk, a group of us had gone up the road, the Forest Service road up the mountain, and drummed, and it was awesome. It was phenomenal. It was so much fun. Like, it was the best. It was so, so good. There was about 5 of us there, and we got up to this point, and we were drumming, and we get done, and we're walking back down, we're drumming. And when we get to the bend of this road, that's where I veered off, and I put my drum away. Barb and another camper were standing there, and I walked past them, and I see that, they're in conversation. I don't want to interfere or intrude. So I continue walking down about 40 feet, and then I just stop. And then that's when I have this encounter and this experience of seeing the Sasquatch, right?
The teenager Sasquatch was jamming out to your drums.
They love when we play music. They absolutely love when we play music. So
it makes sense too, because that's like we've done Alfacast on that. Music is a universal language. It's heart-centered. It's resonating and on all different levels. It is, I mean, even like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. How did they talk to the aliens? It was through music,
the
song of
shuffle step you're describing might even be the crip walk.
I mean, like,
the moonwalk for sure.
It gets trippy, and I'm glad that we get to talk about it on Halloween.
Well, and I actually want to get into fairies and Wolfman too. There is some crazy talk about Wolfman my kids and I've been seeing on YouTube, and like crazy stuff. So, but yeah, keep going here, because I think you're getting to the nuts and bolts here of your experience. So
yes. So now it's like the mimic happened on Thursday. We had talked about doing this recreation. It's Friday. I just have this sighting, and I'm dumbfounded. And then Barb and the other camper, they get done with their conversation. They're walking down, and Barb's like, okay, let's get into it. Let's start up the recreation. Ashley, you stand here. I'm going to go down there. And I was shocked, right? I had just seen the Sasquatch, and I was just like, okay, yeah, let's do this. I didn't say that I had just had this experience, right? So she goes down to her area, and she's like, okay, you start about right there and then walk, and let's see it. So I'm like in a daze, and I was like, oh, I'll light a cigarette, and I start walking. And she's like, that's exactly what I saw. And I said, oh, it looked familiar. It looked similar. She said, no, that's exactly what I saw. So later I had to really wrap my mind around this. And was it a mimic? or was it a time loop? Was there a displacement of time that happened because I had just had this experience with a multidimensional being having a physical sighting, and then right afterwards do something that was in response to what happened the night before, but somehow it turned into literally the exact way that she saw it. So was there a loop? And another aspect of this is that when we first arrived to this area, and it's in my film, it's called The Sasquatch and the Pinecone Game, which I also have to say, it's not pine cones, it's Douglas fir cones. And I didn't know that until after I named it. So for the purist of out there, it is a pine, it is not a pine cone, it's Douglas cone.
For the conifer connoisseur.
Correct. Yes. So in this area, we also found non-functioning slugs. And Barb is really big on slugs, and she'll pick them up and she'll take them, and she doesn't kill them. She goes out every night doing her slug hunting and takes them out of the garden and moves them over to the forest. She's around slugs a lot. And I had been finding them around in this area, and I was like, what's up with these slugs? They just all look dead, but there's no bodily harm to them. There's nothing wrong with their physical bodies, yet they're non-functioning and they're dead. So we found all those, and that's like, we found those first. And then the second scenario in this area is the sighting. And then the third scenario is potentially a time loop. And if there was some sort of like radiation, doesn't matter about linear time isn't part of this equation. But if there was this expulsion of energy during this event, did it showcase itself in these three different ways? I don't know, but that's how weird it gets, and the fairies, as you were mentioning, and the dogmen have been reported all throughout history. And back in the day, they were known as the Stinnett-The. And there are these, very well-known letters from monks who are writing back and forth to each other about the Stinnett-The. And it wasn't about whether or not they existed, but it was about whether or not they should teach them about Christ. If they were the children of Adam, if they were children like us. That was the question of the day. It wasn't, the question wasn't whether or not they existed. And there's tons of reports of how they lived in the mountains of India, and they would come down and they would trade with the kings during that time. And the kings would give them thousands and thousands of swords, and the Stinnett-The would trade and give whatever they would give. And there was this openness and communication connection with them in history, not so much today, right? We have these we have more prominent stories within the dogmen of them being aggressive and potentially lethal than we ever do with like Sasquatch. It's very, very prominent with the dogmen.
Yeah, this is a screenplay I was going to potentially work on. It was that. So there was this story by a truck driver named Joe Barger. I don't know if you've seen this on YouTube. It is wild, about how he was going through the Upper Peninsula Michigan wilderness, driving a big rig, pulling, I believe, paper, like heavy amounts of paper. And he basically has an encounter with a 10-foot tall dogman werewolf type creature that he ends up shooting in the head, because it was coming, basically running along the side of his truck, looking in the back of his window. And he had a telepathic sort of interaction that it was there to kill him. And so he happened to have his 45 or 357 mag and just was able to reach out and shoot this thing right in the head. And then it fell to the side of the road and went into the woods. And so he actually turned around to go see what the hell what happened. He was in shock. And there was these two individuals in an unmarked Jeep already there who were quite suspicious about it. And so long story short is the creature had gone off into the woods, and they said they thought they saw a bear attack, two bears fighting. And it actually looked like there might've been two of those creatures, and they were off into the woods. And so he ends up getting now completely followed and his whole life goes to hell. They end up pulling him at a truck stop, some other agents from an unmarked vehicle, feds, and because he started going public about this. And so they made his life a living hell. They took his firearms, they took all the money out of his bank account. They told him he had to be quiet. So his whole theory was that actually this was a intelligence operation doing genetic modification of these cryptids to make them into super soldiers. And so my screenplay was like this idea of the dog man super soldier creature um, getting out and terrorizing small towns in Michigan, and it's Sasquatch that comes to the rescue.
I
And
love
it's
it.
the only creature that can take these things on because, yeah, it was in full. He was flooring his semi going, 45 up a steep grade, 50 miles an hour. And this thing had no problem
Yeah.
staying right up with him and looking in the window. And when you watch this, and like this guy has everything to lose from telling the story, like his life has been destroyed. So you got to wonder, about sort of the truthfulness around it. So, anyways, I love these stories. That's why I bring it up because it is Halloween. And it is quite fascinating when you start to wrap our heads around all the wild cryptids that could be out there for sure.
And
They're all out there.
And to segue into the fairies, just over the next mountain range here, we've got Shasta very close as the crow flies. And of course, it's a natural vortex and been in inner retreat for the masters forever. And my wife and myself have been involved with the inner circles of that retreat for quite a few decades, actually. And there's a very well-known European photographer who's within the inner circles. And because the veils are so thin there, he's constantly taking pictures within the gardens and the grounds there in the retreat. And there's many pictures on display, photographs, where you actually see the elementals, the fairies, whatever you want to call them. So that just happens to be an area where, again, the veils are thin and you can actually pick them up on photograph. Also within that retreat, of course, there's teachings and instruction involved, with the students that go there. And you really get an elaboration of how every botanical species, everything you see when you just walk around outside, has an elemental that is the living consciousness intelligence that is manifesting that particular specimen for our use. Every tree has they call it a tree keeper. So there's a lot of folks that are invisible to us that are out there all the time. I've seen with my own eyes pictures, actual photographs of this, and then some other stuff that's even more remarkable.
Yeah, it's the invisible world is invisible until it isn't, and then it
Yeah.
is very visible, right?
Ashley,
You
can you
can't
tell us
not see it after you've seen it.
Yeah,
can you tell us your fairy story?
totally. So this is now this is now 3 Septembers ago, and man alive, like I all right, let's go. So
Wait, let me roll one. Let me roll one real quick.
yeah, seriously. Get prepared. Get prepared for this one. So
Fire up the volcano, Mike.
I have some friends who live off of the Columbia River Gorge past Hood River in a town called Mosier. And they live on some very, very pristine, untouched, unmolested land of a very large amount. And this land is also it's a refuge. There's no hunting allowed. The deer are prolific around there. The wild turkeys. Nature is abundant. They do phenomenal work on just keeping a very, very healthy forest. And they've got an old oak forest, and they've got just so many different types of environments on this land as well. So they've lived out there for quite some time, and we've known that the Sasquatch are there, but they haven't necessarily been engaging with my friends, or trying to communicate or any of that. And it's also like an aspect of respect, because my friends weren't necessarily looking for that, so respectfully, there hasn't been a lot of connection, even though my friends who live there have absolutely had lots of different experiences with UFOs and elementals and all of that. There had just been, I'm doing my stuff over here, you guys do your stuff, and we'll share this land together. But three or 4 years ago, it became apparent that the Sasquatch on the land did want to reach out and start a friendship and a connection to at least my friends who were living on that land. And that's when I got a call from my friend and said, hey, do you want to come out here? There's a female, and the female on this land is a bit of a shaman. She is a medicine woman Sasquatch, who, that's how she presented herself in dream time to my friend. And in this dream, like, there was a gift exchange, and then the next morning she found the gift, like, they're in physical real life. There was the same thing like out in the real world. So there were these avenues of this Sasquatch wanting to connect with her, and then she said, I think she wants to connect with you as well. So I planned a camp out on the land. This is like 7 years later of going out and visiting and staying out there at their place. But it was the first time of staying in a tent or in my truck, like out in the land and in a very specific part of the land where this creek runs through. So I went with, I invited my friends Kevin and Sandy, and they're retired, and they do over, like, I don't know, 100 and 200 days in camping a year, doing this and interacting and having the experiences with the Sasquatch and everyone else. Cause again, it ain't just Sasquatch. So I invited them. I said, hey, you guys want to come down here? We can check out this land. Like, literally no one's camped out here. No one, this land has been in the same family, in the same situation since the 1800s, right? It's very, very unmolested. So very pure. And we go down there. My tent.
So no cremation of care ceremonies or anything.
Correct. Not at all. My tent, like one of the rods in it had broken. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stay in my truck and check that out and see how camping in my truck is, because I'd never done that before. So I've got a Gladiator, and so it's like a Jeep, right, on the inside. And I had set my bed up on the front passenger seat, and I laid it back into a bed situation. I had my my pillows and my blankies, and so that's where I was going to stay. My friends were Kevin and Sandy were in a tent, and then the people who lived on the land, they came in for like one night, a couple nights in. So it was I think it was the last night of this camp. We're sitting outside around the campfire, and a massive orb of light comes in, and it's like it just stays within the trees, and it's slowly moving about, and it's about the size of a basketball. Like, it's not small. And we're watching it. We have that experience. It's something that we've seen before. And as it comes into this clearing, we're expecting it to pop out and we'll all be able to see it, with no issue. And when it gets into this clearing, it goes boop, 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 and it just like is gone. And it collapsed in on itself, and it took off. So that happened. And we had heard some splashing in the creek. We definitely knew that they were there, and it was time to go to sleep. And my friends, Kevin and Sandy, went to their tent. I went to the truck, and I had some window coverings, but they were for a different vehicle, but I brought them anyways. They didn't totally fit, but they did block, they blocked like 80% of the windows. But there were still these cracks in areas where you could see outside. And I noticed that night that even though the night before I could, or you know, the time before at nighttime being in my truck, I could see outside. I could see the silhouettes of nature and of the trees and whatnot. That night, none. It was like as soon as I got inside the truck, I was in a float tank. It was complete full darkness and like all encompassing darkness. And I'm laying there and I start to feel the energetic presence. I'm thinking of this shamanic Sasquatch. Pretty sure that's who it was. Her energy was off the charts. It was unlike, and these the energy that you feel from the Sasquatch, it's very different from each one, right? And so for her particular energy, it was so intense. And I felt her. I was laying, you know, on this seat, and I felt her walk up the side of the truck, and I felt it all along here. And then I started getting the energetic work and the energy flowing through my body that is associated with the Sasquatch. They will do energy work on you. Okay. Especially if you ask. If you have something wrong physically, like if you've got a bad shoulder or something, you can ask, can you help me with my shoulder? I've seen it done 1,000 times over. They'll help you physically heal through a energetic something that they can, you know, place upon you, put inside you. You feel it inside your body. It's a vibration, like almost like when your arm goes asleep or your foot goes asleep, and how it's tingly all within. That's the same, only it's not discomfort. It's not uncomfortable. So
but are they licensed to do that?
No, and they better never get a license. So this was going on, and I was feeling it all throughout my body. And it didn't just last for 5 minutes. It went on for 45 minutes. It went on for 45 minutes. And to the point where I was like, you know, I think I'm good. I think I'm good with this. And maybe we don't have to do this anymore. Cause it was 45 minutes. And then like, wow. I felt it all like rush out of my body. And then at that point, I realized that I had been laying for 45 minutes, potentially like I was stiff as a board. I was stiff as a board, and I was not laying on the seat. And then when I relaxed myself, I melted into the seat. And at that point I was like, how in the world was I like bored stiff for 45 minutes? Like, that's strange to me. And I wasn't sore or anything from being that rigid for 45 minutes. So it's like coming off of that, and I feel her move away. I can feel that energy leave the area. And then in this little pocket of space on the window of the driver's side of the truck, I start seeing a glow over by the outside side mirror. And I'm like this, and I just look with my eyes, and I look over, and there is a fairy. There is a fairy, little lady body, perfectly proportioned lady body of emerald green bioluminescence. And she's like this big, and she has this wispy, it's like a wispy fog coming off of her in the shape of hair and in the shape of wings. And the wispy fog is like a jade green. It's a lighter green. And then her bioluminescent body was this deep emerald green, and it was lighting up everything around it. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Were you embodied at this time, or you think you might have been out of body? Like, were you knew you were in a dream? You felt like you were.
I was 100% in my senses, aware, awake. Absolutely. This is a true, real experience happening to me. All that shit just happened beforehand, and now I'm here and I got a little fairy on the outside. Are you kidding me? Kidding me? So and she's like on the out, like if this is the mirror, you know, she's popping in out and looking at me and then hiding and then coming back and then doing this and playing like this like little game of looking. And every time I looked at her, like it's pitch black, you can't see my eyes, I'm not moving, yet when I look over and look with my eyes, that's when she darts back and she looks, you know, it's like she knew when I was looking. And I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me, man. Like, this is, I wasn't fucking expecting this. Absolutely not. And so then she's there, and then there's two. And now there's a second one. And now they're both, like, they both fit, like head or, you know, toe to head and then toe to head. They fit above each other on the side mirror of a Jeep, of a Wrangler, of a Gladiator, right?
They're like Tinkerbell size.
Yeah. So next time you go to a Jeep, look at the side mirror and then cut it in half. And those are the size of them. And I was like, oh my God, now there's two. And I was like, I gotta go to bed. I was just like, I can't deal with this. This is too much. I was like, what if I have to pee? There's no way I'm getting up and like leaving this truck if I got to go to the bathroom. So like, I just need to go to sleep. I just need to fall asleep.
Were you tingling with energy? Like, were you scared? What was your overall?
All of it. It wasn't necessarily fear, but when you're put in those positions and you're seeing things, like everything is elevated and everything becomes aware and like your body reacts. There was an absolute physical reaction to this, to where everything was heightened. Every aspect of my sensory abilities was at like at 1,000. It was at 11. You know, it was at the highest levels of just bringing in all of this information of what's going on. And then it was too much. And I said, I can't handle this. Like, this is an overload. I need to step away from this. I need like, there's no way that I can leave this place, leave the truck. Like, I got to go to bed. I got to go to sleep. That was my thinking. And so as I'm thinking this, and they're, you know, on the outside of the mirror, I close my eyes. And again, it's still this like pitch black float tank aspect of darkness inside the truck and outside the truck, except for the two little fairy ladies. And I close my eyes. And when I do, there's these two ribbons of purple light that I see inside my head that start undulating and going like this from my periphery and coming to meet in the center. And this is when my eyes are closed. Boom, I start seeing it. And I'm like, what is that? And I open my eyes. When I open my eyes, I can still see this energetic purple ribbon. I close my eyes. I open my eyes. I close my eyes. And then I see it. Every single, you know, doesn't matter if my eyes are open or closed, I'm still seeing this ribbon that's coming towards each other. And when the ribbons met right here in the middle, boom, I fell asleep. 100%, just out like a light. And then I don't wake up until 5, 6 o'clock in the morning when it starts getting lit. And I woke up and I was like, boom, you know, just woke up and I was like, well, all of that stuff happened last night. And I was like, well, I can go to the bathroom now. Like, it's safe to go to the bathroom now. So I got out of the truck and I went over to the potty tent and I did my business. And as I was walking back, I see that Kevin and Sandy are at the foot of the truck, at the tailgate of the truck. I'm like, what are they doing up? You know? So I go over there and I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing up? And they were like, well, I don't know. We just woke up. We just woke up and we heard like these little lady voices outside the tent laughing and talking. And I was like, what? It's like, y'all don't even know what happened to me last night. Y'all don't even know. You just standing here, you telling me you heard some voices and it woke you up this morning. Well, let me tell you what happened last night. So that was, I don't want to say that was my introduction to fairies. I think I've had other experiences with them in the past, but I can't say for certain. With this, with this experience from 3 Septembers ago, absolutely 100,000%. Like that was little fairies. And here's the thing. Earlier that night, we jammed some awesome music, guitar, penny whistle, drums. Like we had a lot of fun with music, and it was a gift that we gave. And what happened in exchange that night, we were given some gifts as well of just their presence and their acknowledgement. So we're absolutely not alone. And any type of thought process, like absolutely we're not alone. Not everything in the woods is out to get you, you know. We're living amongst very highly intelligent, highly heart-centered, compassionate, loving beings who are existing like in beautiful ways outside of the matrix systems that we find ourselves in. And to me, it's this it's a reflection of where we can be and what we can do and how we can be incredibly sovereign and how we can take care of each other, take care of ourselves, and take care of this land in beautiful ways. It can be done here. It doesn't have to be a big pile of shit. Like the Sasquatch, the elementals, everybody is living in a really great harmony with themselves and even with us. Because if they wanted to, if they were malicious enough, if they had the ill intent where they were just like, we're done with you people, you guys are screwing everything up, we're done, and so are you. They could absolutely take out anything and everyone they want. Don't matter. Like their abilities are so much bigger than what we could ever wrap our heads around. But they don't do that, right? And that's where I see that there is a higher spirituality and there's a higher godliness and ambassadorship of godliness that is coming from them. They're not going to interfere with our evolution, because we have to stand up on our own 2 feet and take care of ourselves and learn how to do that and regain that strength and confidence. And if we just had someone do that for us, then we lose out. And they're not going to let us lose out on that growth. They're like, we'll help you, we'll encourage you, you know, and if you come seeking us, then you can go along this path and learn in deeper and more beautiful ways. But ultimately, it's up to you guys, you know.
And with that level of intelligence comes compassion and understanding that we're all having an experience. And even though there seems to be a lot of screwing up in the realm lately, yeah, we're all individualizations of the same source. So when you know that, you lose your ability to be aggressive or violent in any way. But also explains why they may not be appearing before us all the time at present.
Yeah, and there is an aspect of indigenous belief where the Sasquatch aren't seen by the people until the people need the Sasquatch to be seen.
Mm-hmm,
you know,
mm-hmm.
like that there's a time within like and if this is a cyclical type of experience for humans to rise up into consciousness and to come back down into some lower base levels, you know, maybe there is this really beautiful relationship that we share in the higher ways, but you know, when we get really mucked up, the Sasquatch do come back around to remind us of what is important and what compassion and leading with the heart does. And they really are these ambassadors of that. I haven't had a negative hardcore bad experience or something that was frightening or, you know, oh my God, my life was in danger. None of that has happened. Yet I've had them this far away from me, literally this far away from me on the other side of the tent, you know.
It could also be that they're a bit of a reflection of the individual, because you see on YouTube these stories of Sasquatch with hunters, and they look and they've got the red eyes, right? And they look almost demonic, and people in the chat are like, they're demons. I'm sure they're demons. They're evil creatures. And I'm like, it's just a reflection of society in general and where we are, like in the terms of what the human nature is.
Yeah.
For people to project that, it's a projection more coming from those people than the true reality, the ontological reality of what Sasquatch is.
Right. They have red eyes. That doesn't mean that they're evil, you know, but that's something that we place upon that as humans through like the conditioning that we have through Hollywood or whatever, that says that a red eye is a sign of evil or evil intention or something like that. You know, the eye, and it, you know, they call it eye shine from the Sasquatch, but it's not an eye shine like you would have in a deer or a cat or something like that. Um, they're producing light out of their eyes. It's not reflection, it's a production of red or blue or white or whatever they want. Again, you know, like they have that capability and control of the physical body. So yes, as you what you just said, the where a human is and how much fear they have within them is the dictator of where what direction the story goes when it comes to an encounter that that person might have had.
Yeah, and I'll just say one more thing too on evil. Well, evil is a human construct. It's not actually comes out of source or nature. There is no evil in nature. There is no evil from the divine intelligence. And so if someone's truly tapped in and divine to their eternal self, they don't exist within evil. Evil is like sin. If you take the Spanish sort of meaning, sin is without intelligence. It's projecting things into the materium and seeing that that is the priority. That's where evil comes from. So it makes sense if they're really, really tapped in. Of course, they're not going to be evil. They're going to be compassion and love and all the actual true, the true nature of what the reality comes from. So I
And if you
appreciate
want
that.
to just look at the spell aspect of evil, it's simply the inversion of live.
Yeah.
And so here we go again with our word game. But I take great solace in the fact that people like yourself are out there, not just having those experiences and ready to have those experiences, but you're out here in the open airwaves sharing your experiences. And to me, that means that we're just a little moment away from mankind waking up and openly cohabitating with other life forms, intelligence, and I guess you'd probably call it true diversity. We're not just we're going beyond the politicalization of diversity, but the fact that this realm is rife with just amazing life forms. And as they say in the Ascended Master Instruction, our fiction pales in comparison with the reality of the realm that we actually inhabit.
Totally. Absolutely, man. Truth is so much stranger than fiction. There's so much beauty and wonder and loving experience and in this world. Something that I say this a lot, but I said it recently, and it's something that I say a lot because I think it has a lot of truth in it. It's like the Sasquatch, they might be reaching out to us. We might be reaching out to them. We might be having this student teacher relationship with them. We're having all these experiences. We're learning, learning, learning. And yes, that's very important. That's a very important aspect of this. But one of the bigger aspects of this topic is the people who are coming together and the humans that are coming together over this topic and to share their personal experiences and to learn and to grow and to do those things. And even though like the reason why we're all coming together is this very, very big reason of the Sasquatch, the byproduct of us coming together is almost even more important because it's the human relationships, the friendships, and the connections that we are making and the ways that we get to learn from each other and support each other and to do all these things together. It's like the Sasquatch know that too. It's like, yeah, we're bringing you guys together, but the bigger thing is that you guys are coming together over this topic and you're now in each other's circles. You're now within each other's lives. You're now influencing and encouraging each other in the most beautiful ways. and they're happy to be the bridges, and they're happy to teach along the way. But again, it's more about us. It's more about us and our growth, and then what we do together. So I am so honored that I've been able to have this walk with them. It's humbling. It's absolutely humbling to be able to have this high caliber of teaching, and a pure teaching that is coming from the heart. And the lessons don't necessarily mean that, that doesn't mean that it's an easy lesson to learn. What I have noticed with the Sasquatch people, and with people who are going down this route of really exploring connection with them, you better be ready to work on yourself, because like there's an element of healing. There's an element of inner, doing this inner work and looking within, and seeing where the flaws are, and then like putting true intention into making yourself better. That is what is most important out of this, and that is what the Sasquatch are bringing forth. When I went on my first trip with Barb, with her group in 2018, she looked at me and she said, you can just tell them whatever you want. If you have a request, if you have something, you can just look into the woods and you can say it. And at that point in my life, I had been struggling with alcoholism for most of my life. I struggled with alcoholism. And I was at a point where I knew I had to do something about it, but I was also very, very afraid of what that looked like, and if I could do it on my own. And so on that first camp out, I looked into the woods and I told them, I said, please help me heal that which I need to heal. Because again, I didn't even have the courage to say, please help me with my alcoholism. I couldn't even do that, right? So in this very naked, in front of the forest and in front of them way, I asked for help in healing that which I needed to have healed. And it started a series of events where they did just that. That first night of that first camp out, I had, and this is what I talk about in the extended interview for A Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot, but you don't really hear this aspect of it. You kind of just hear what I experienced, which was I was in my tent. I had 2 fingers go down the sides of my head, across my temples, down to my jaw. There were at least 3 individuals on the outside of the tent having a conversation. It was a monotone conversation. I couldn't figure out the accent or the language.
And were you by yourself?
Monotone. Huh?
Were you by yourself?
In that area, yes. I wasn't by myself in camp, but I was absolutely, completely by myself in this area. Absolutely. No one had showed up. So yeah, like that was a funny thing, because it was my very first camp and I was like, I am fucking alone out here. So yeah, I was totally alone. And these voices happened. There was like some individuals who jumped out of trees, and you could hear the thump on the ground. I had a body scan that happened. I'm pretty sure that the voices that I heard on the outside weren't Sasquatch. I think that they were star people, because it was this androgynous voice, and they all sounded exactly the same. And I've heard Sasquatch speak in their language, and I've heard them yell and scream and do all of that since then. And it's always very masculine or feminine when I hear the Sasquatch. So looking back at this event, I think I had multiple layers of help from the star people and from the Sasquatch. And like I said, I had asked for that help. They did this stuff. They did the body scan. That was in June. And I went home from that camp and continued my bad behavior, which at that point looked like 4 to 6, maybe 10 beers a night, or 10 ciders a night. That was my jam, right? I'd come home from work and I'd just go straight into that loop. And I did that on the 3rd of July. I went outside and I had my cider, and I took my dog out to go potty, and we're in the front yard, and I look up and there's this massive orb the size of about a basketball that is flying over the treetop, going straight over top of me and going behind the house. And I looked at it. As I did this, I looked at it, it went right straight over top of me. It wasn't something that was uncommon to me, because I'd seen those things before. I acknowledged it. Whatever, cool, thanks. And I go to bed. The next morning, I wake up and the entire world is spinning. Like I had drank a bottle of Jack Daniels, right? And I try to get up. I try to go to the bathroom. I fall. I can't even stand up. I'm like, wow, I guess I drank too much last night. You know, I'm going to go back to bed. It's the 4th of July. I have the day off. My partner has to go to work and she goes to work. I wake back up. I'm like, this isn't right. I'm still like this. It's even worse. I can't stand. The entire world is spinning in circles. I call my partner. I'm like, something's wrong. So we go to the hospital, go to the emergency room. They're like, yeah, you have vertigo. I'm like, oh, I have vertigo. Okay, that's strange. I've never had that before. It came out of nowhere. I had this orb fly over me. And, you know, just a few weeks earlier, I asked for help. And then I also didn't do anything about that. I just continued along with my stuff. So here's this secondary thing that happened. And on the 4th of July, Independence Day, was my first day of not drinking alcohol. And
oh, wow.
And the reason is because of like this vertigo that I had from July to October. From July to October, every moment I had my eyes open, it was like I had drank a bottle of Jack Daniels, and
Wow.
I couldn't drive. I had to walk with a cane. I couldn't go to work. I had to stay at home and think about what I had been doing to myself and how I had gotten myself into this predicament. And what's really interesting about vertigo is that when you feel vertigo, it's because, and when you get drunk and you get the spins, it's because that same area is being affected, right? So it was like the Sasquatch, in a very loving way, sat me down and were like, if you really like, you know, feeling drunk all the time, what if you felt it 24/7 for 6 months? Do you still like it? Do you still want that within your sphere, within yourself? Do you really like that? So it was like, it was the parent who caught their kid smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
They were like, sit
pack.
down, smoke the entire pack, and see if you feel like ever having a cigarette ever again. Well, that was 2018 and it's 2024. I never have had a drink of alcohol since the 4th of July, or since the 3rd of
Awesome.
July. You know what I mean?
Congratulations on that.
So that alone right there, guys, if you need anything else in terms of confirmation on why this is impactful on one's life, right? Like right there, that's incredible.
Is huge, huge. And it dominoed my life into a better direction than I've ever had. I have more clarity, I have more healing. I've had more internal work. I've been able to put that focus on myself with the clarity that I haven't had for a very, very long time. And I asked and I received, and humbly, I keep moving down this road. How could you not, you know, like in service to this incredible gift I was given? So.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. You know, my experience in the healing arts too is, as far as what we would think of as substance abuse and addiction, it tends to follow people. Of course, you know, we all have our stuff and we're trying to numb out, you know, we all do it in different ways. Some people might, you know, watch Netflix and, you know, binge that kind of way. On the other hand, people that are more inclined to be tuned in this other level, and also on a conscious or subconscious level, wanting to make that kind of spiritual connection, will very often be the ones that, you know, will use drugs and substances. You know, it's very common knowledge, and I know you know that. But so yeah, it's a matter of taking care of dealing with the trauma that maybe got us to those extremes. But then on the other hand, realize it's part of ourselves that's actually trying to reach out into those other areas. And And it takes a little experience to find out that maybe the substances, the alcohol, whatever, isn't the way to do it. And retain that clarity that we might get from the other side in the first place. So that's an amazing story. And it's all about our self-healing. That's what we're here to do. And self-healing, bottom line, means forgiving ourselves. And yeah.
Totally.
And there's yeah. So I'll just leave it there. But thank you so much for sharing. And what you're doing is invaluable. Just helping people just become aware that we aren't alone, and there's a lot more going on than meets the eye, and it's wonderful and nothing to be afraid of.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate this opportunity to have this conversation, this digital campfire with you guys and your audience. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to talk about. And there's stories galore, but the meat and potatoes of this goes so much deeper. And I'm appreciative for our exploration today. Thank you both so much.
Yeah, and thank you. And if you're in the middle of transition from the Pacific Northwest to the Southwest there, stop on by on your way down south. We're not that far. We're about 5 hours from Portland.
Yeah, cool.
And just straight down the highway. So you're always welcome to come visit.
Thank you very much.
And probably explore these woods, because we're just looking out into woods for miles and miles, and mountain ranges, and Native Americans here call it the Klamath Knot, because it's a convergence of 3 different mountain ranges and rivers, and it's probably the most amazing contiguous wilderness area in the whole country. And it's an area that is probably less traveled than any other area. And there's stuff going out on in those woods for sure.
Absolutely. You are in a very, very special area of this realm. And man, I'd love to. And I will say this, and this is interesting. I know that you both have had your own experiences with the Sasquatch. I will say this, and something is leveling up. In my opinion, something is leveling up in these days that we find ourselves in, and something that has happened now with Danny, with Emily Moyer, with a couple of other people who I am talking to and having interviews with about the subject of Sasquatch. They are then having their own experiences and gifting happening with the Sasquatch. And it's not that they are necessarily initiating, but that the Sasquatch are initiating some contact and gifting with them. So I wouldn't be surprised now that it's more in our consciousness, more in your consciousness, and you're thinking about it more. Mike, just like you said, you were thinking about Sasquatch was on your mind, and you started having these experiences around. So I would not be surprised if you start finding weird feathers or, Sasquatch shaped smoky quartz or, whatever in areas that make you stop and turn your head a little bit and say, how in the world did that just get here? Okay.
I'm really looking forward to a Sasquatch massage.
They can really get into those problem areas.
Knots. Yeah. From all my years of abusing myself in my hippie movement.
Yeah.
But this has been so phenomenal. Everybody, please go subscribe to Ashlea's channel. It's on the show notes below. You can find her on TikTok. Do you have a website as well?
I don't have a website. Okay. I'm just doing the video documentation. I've got all the Sasquatch stuff up on YouTube and predominantly the UFO videos on TikTok. And then I also am publishing the blank journals and monthly planners through KDP. And you can find that, just go on Amazon and put my name into the search bar. Here's a little aspect of weirdness. You've got to put quotations around my name because my name is spelled a little differently than your normal Ashlea. Yeah. And Amazon doesn't like the way I spell my name, and it'll reverse it to the normal spelling of Ley. So when that pops up, you'll actually find an author who is writing about cryptids in Appalachia named Ashlea Stinnett.
Oh,
So that's not me.
wow.
Interesting.
Me, it's very interesting. But with
The
me and
government
my spelling,
operative, maybe?
I don't know, but it's really interesting. I don't know. I would love to meet this man someday and sit down and have a nice cup of coffee and talk weird stuff with him. We'll see.
Yeah.
Uh, but when you do put my name in with the quotations Lea as the spelling Ashlea, then you get to come to my author page, and that's where you can find the planners and the journals. And I'm using photography of the footprints I find, of the structures, of their natural habitat. I think that, the written word is one of the most important things we have in this realm, especially these days of digital throwawayness and how everything can just be destroyed and now it's gone, like the Wayback Machine, right? Like, we don't have our documentation anymore because it's so easily removed. It's much harder to remove the physical book that you've written your story in. And what is more important than anything else, I think, is our personal stories and the impact that we have on each other. So this little project of mine is to encourage everyone to write down your own stories. Write down your stories, write down your history, try to get as much history of your family as possible and put it in these physical books. And if
Oh man, that's what Anastasia talks about. Have you read the Ringing Cedars books? In the kins, like to have your own kins book, so you write down the history of your family and it's passed down from generation to generation, and that's what people used to do.
What we used to do, and it got
Yeah.
ripped away from us, and probably for nefarious reasons, because it's
Yeah.
very, very potent when humans know their roots.
Yeah.
And when our roots get destroyed and cut, we're very, very easily malleable. And that's why I am so passionate about this. Like, let's tell our stories, let's get them down on paper, let's get them into the hands of the younger generations of our family, and also take these stories and wrap them up in something waterproof and go bury them in your land, so that in 500 years or so, there's other people who can get a real and true outlook of reality through the words that you left. So,
and when you put your own hand to the paper, it carries a resonance that cannot be carried digitally. We have an experiment in biogeometry where we can actually measure the presence of life force. And without getting too technical about it, you can write something on a piece of paper and then do the measurement. And then you see that life force becomes very prominent just a split second before the actual writing happens. And it just starts to trail off at the end of the writing, and then nothing again. So nothing before and after. And then that's what they call biogeometry 3, which is a resonance of nature, of natural design, basically. So it's a quantifiable qualitative effect of when you actually write something with your own hand, which is maybe why they don't teach cursive in school anymore.
Absolutely. Like, get down to the meat and potatoes of it. And what are we, if not like these, creationary beings who, like, literally with our cursive can manipulate reality for the good or the bad, right? Like,
yes.
Whoa, we are the key. There's something about humans and this idea that we're just parasites upon something that was a perfected thing, and we've parasited off of this world. I don't think so, man. I think that there is an absolute complete divine nature to us. Obviously, that's what we're taught, that's what we're told. We get that, but like, really sink your teeth into it. We're the key. Us humans are the key to this experience, and the others in the other dimensions and the other aspects of higher consciousness and expression know this, and they are encouraging from afar, but they aren't doing it for us, and that's like, we're in a spiritual battleground. As these keys, as these human keys, we have the capability to connect with anything and everything on the spectrum of the supernatural. So again, like, if you're putting your Bigfoot into it, be responsible. Absolutely be responsible, and know when there are masters of trickery amongst those who are the masters of teaching as well. Know the difference. walk well and do so with your highest good in mind and the highest good for the entire experience. So
beautiful.
And James Brown said it best when he said, "Get on the Bigfoot," or was it the Goodfoot? I forget which one was it.
Goodfoot, get on the
Good
Goodfoot. Um, yeah,
Thank you,
that's so
Ashley.
on
This has
point,
been
Ashley.
amazing.
So on point. Thank you so much. And yeah, it seems like Bigfoot's just begging for us to ask him to help or her to help.
Yeah.
Right. You're
And
worried about the fires burning the forest down. We got that. Just ask, we'll stop the DEWs.
I think we've lived in the past in a harmonious way with them and others. It's been ripped away from us in this current matrix, but it's definitely something I feel like we're going back into. And if we are going back into a scenario where, potentially we have a vapor canopy, potentially we have different, atmospheric conditions or ways in which we are living on Earth, in Earth, all of these things. It sure is nice to have some big brothers and sisters who have been doing it like to the nines for their entire existence. It's nice to have them as the scout leaders for our new experience of what I feel like we're going into a new experience, right? And it's not a negative one, but doesn't mean it's not going to be challenging. But it's also nice to know that we have help. We do have help.
Yeah, and it's all about each of us individually reestablishing our own microcosm of the larger realm and our own vapor canopy. And the more of us that do that, then the entire realm will change with us. And I think that's the significance of our experience.
Yep, I agree.
Well, here's to Chewie, my favorite character on Star Wars. Definitely some truth drops in that movie. And they go to this in the later crappier middle movies, they go to the world of the Wookiee. And that's something we'll have you back on, Ashley. This is a deep topic, but something we could talk about. Is there a portal to Bigfoot land? This is a kind of a crazy book, The Sasquatch Message to Unity or to Humanity. But yeah, the idea of that they're coming from a portal and that we can go with them to their world, or that maybe we're in the dream, as the shamans say, and that this is their dream and they come in through their dreaming and they're trying to wake us up. Anyhow,
or maybe we're their dream.
That's what I mean. Yeah, we're their dream.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry, man. The acid's really kicking in. We gotta go. Love you guys. Have a merry Halloween. And we'll see you next week for another great show. We got Martin Leakey on Flat. Are you familiar with his work, Ashley?
Absolutely. Flat thumbs, yes.
Yes. That'll be a good one. And actually, I should connect you with Jason Brashears because I think he would you guys could have a really fun talk.
Oh, yeah, he'd love you.
Yeah, I did reach out to him. We had some email exchanges, and he's just a busy man. So if you can put a little song in his ear, that would be great. Because I would love to talk
responds
about
to me. Yeah, he responds to me immediately. I'll drop him a line. And is it okay to share your information?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody in the chat. It's been stimulating and hilarious as always. And we love you and appreciate you. Remember to get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go for a hike, go search for Bigfoot, go knocking, knock on that wood or just give it a hug. And it'll probably knock right back, right? That's my boys and I do that. We go backpacking, we go out knocking in the wilderness. But yeah, love you guys. We'll see you next week, Thursday, 10 a.m. And show Ashley some love. Go support her and subscribe to her channel. Peace.